The best part of the football season? Checking out the post-game stats. Which wideouts scored more than 2 touchdowns? Which quarterbacks threw for less than 350 yards? Think you can pick who will do what before kickoff? Then play Pick 6 from DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, select between 2 and 6 players, and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. It's that simple. And for all our first-time Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers, play $5 on your first pick set, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code BALLERS. That's code BALLERS for new customers to play $5 on your first pick set and get $50 in Pick 6 credits only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
This holiday season, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond the moment they open it. There's the sound of them unboxing super soft Lululemon loungewear. And then, there's the sound of them slipping into deep recovery mode after every workout. With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
The DFS Studio is brought to you by DraftKings. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. It's Tuesday, November 19th, here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganone, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. Stop, drop, and roll. You're on fire, Betz.
You know, Kyle, I don't know if I'm too recency biased, but I'm kind of bummed this morning, if I'm being honest.
Oh, yeah. No.
I know. And what you're referring to is the props in the DFS pass, which have stayed in fuego, as the kids say. Is that a thing? I don't know. We talked about it last week, right? We came off the 10-0 week after coming off the 9-2 week, and we told everybody in Discord on the show, expect regression. Just straight up.
Said stay away.
You should probably fade these bets. And we were hot again, 7-1. Okay, Kyle. So I am excited about that. But I like to turn the page, and it's just what have you done for me lately? And Cooper Rush just put us in the grave last night. We had an under on his longest pass, and Kevontae Turpin out there just takes it 60 yards to the house, and that was over quick. So just the recency bias of that was a bummer is stuck with me, which is funny. But yes, man, another 7-1 week, incredible run in the DFS pass. I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just again, I'm going to say it again. You should expect some losses coming soon. So that's where we're at.
It has been nice the last couple of weeks that our process kind of led us to some plays that some of them are just off the board. I've had a couple people reach out how do you guys pick those plays of all of them? And it's a lot of times just you're researching, something kind of stumbles in, and you're Drake May. We had his longest rush where the line we didn't like of his overall rushing yards. I think it was at 27.5. I actually think he hit the under. But
did he?
I think he hit the under on his overall rushing yards, but over on his longest rush, which he's done every single week this year. So it's kind of just finding the intricacies of, and we also got fortunate, right? Some Drew Sample stuff got overturned. Just some fortunate things. Who could forget Jason Sanders, my kicking prop? I thought it was dead, and look at us, we're alive.
Kyle's boom boom kicker prop of the week is locked and loaded, guaranteed. Yeah, you're right. This is one of those things too, where it's easy to just move on and be oh, cool, we were so right every time. No, we were on the right side of variance for 3 weeks in a row, right? Because like you said, we had a Drew Sample under as part of a parlay. the first pass, it was like a little swing pass. I was like, oh, please be backwards. Please be backwards. They scored it a run as a lateral. So we're like, okay, we're good. So we got lucky there. The Sanders prop should not have hit because if Gardner Minshew doesn't throw that interception in the fourth quarter, they probably don't get another chance at a field goal, right? So you got lucky there. A couple weeks ago, we had a Laporta under. He leaves early because of injury. Like it's all part of the process, and it's a good reminder to, when you're on the right side of it, understand you were lucky. There's some luck involved in this stuff. And when you're on the wrong side of it, it's okay not to be like, oh, I'll never win again. This is terrible. You have to understand where the variance is and how to adjust for it.
Yeah. One of the things that we've talked about in the offseason, and I know when we get to 2025, which is very close, right around the corner, you and I will talk more about the psychology of DFS. And, often we lean on the side of I was almost right. And we've talked before many times in this podcast. There's also the other scenario of I was almost wrong. So it's kind of balancing those two things, not being up too much, down too much, and just reviewing the process. And I think to not say the same thing over and over again, I just like the process of tinkering with cash lineups, with props, and kind of figuring out like, okay, like, did we find something here that wasn't just inefficient in the betting market, but we kind of foresaw this with how the game flow would go, and this is the direction we're leaning, and sometimes we'll get it right, sometimes we'll get it wrong. But the DFS pass is caliente, as I said earlier. I mean, Betz is just on the floor, in flames right now, and I'm just watching him, and I'm enjoying it because I feel like if you got the DFS pass, if you've gotten it beginning of the season, it's paid for itself. I had people this past week say, I just got it because you guys were on a hot run, and it already paid for itself in a week. So you can go to dfspass.com. It's still half off if you want it, which is a stupid value. And then on top of that, you can use the promo code DFSPod. And then here's the best part. You don't just get a product, but you actually get people with it. That's my little alliteration right there.
Wow.
Not just a product.
That was really touching, Kyle.
You get a people because you get to hop into Discord.
You get people.
Dang it, I messed it up already. Man, I need to make sure that I get that in writing. Tell Andy what to do. But dfspass.com if you want to join in with our Discord and get talk through everything. But let's review.
Straight cash, homie.
I mean, this is bread and butter kind of stuff where we get to review, talk about cash, talk about props, and kind of see where things went right. You were down to the wire, my friend, in cash this week. And Davis Allen said, I want to punch you right in the kisser. I want you to take a Tyson to the face.
Oh,
and
man.
So it was tough for you because it really kind of came down to what did you do at quarterback? So Purdy was our top quarterback. Russell Wilson and Winston were the other popular guys. I ended up on Winston, which you got a crazy ceiling outcome. I mean, he's on pace to throw the ball 730 times in his start. So he's got a crazy ceiling, and we've also seen a floor. But I ended on Jameis, and because of that, that really kind of pushed me over the top in cash.
Yeah, that was a nice outcome for anybody that played Jameis. The game script was perfect for him to just chuck, right? And that's what he does. He doesn't care. Yeah, I played a Purdy team, and I think I finished 1.4 when it was all said and done, 1.4 points off the cash line. So one of those weeks where it's just like, man, that hurts. I've said this on the show before. I would rather just get like crushed than be that close. It just hurts worse. But it happens, I played Davis Allen, like you said. I think I'm just done playing Rams players in cash that aren't Cooper Kupp, Nakua, or Kyron Williams. Now, he did still run more routes than Colby Parkinson, so you could argue like maybe it was still the right play, maybe it was fine, but obviously he airballed, and that was always in the range of outcomes for a guy like that. The other thing that I thought was interesting for cash, and you made a really good point about this in trying to decide like which team to play, because for me it was either Purdy or Winston, and that lets you either get up or down at tight end, and maybe you adjust your defense a little bit. But the overall like quote unquote cash team I thought was pretty straightforward. You made a good point Sunday morning. You were like, man, if I play Juwan Jennings, Christian McCaffrey, there's a pretty good chance I can soak up, 80%, 90% of Purdy's production in most outcomes. But, and that lets you play Winston, right? Whereas I was like, I trust the Niners. I'm going to play the Niners. I'm going to talk about the Niners in a minute, man. It's hard to put your finger on the pulse of like what is wrong, right? Like there's a lot of things that are just like not working. And in hindsight, I don't know if this is bias or not, but playing Purdy without Kittle might have been bad process. I mean, no Ayuk, no Kittle. I mean, their left tackle, Trent Williams, is like limping through games at this point. It's like maybe that was bad process. So it's hard to say. That's where I was. Not a great week for me in cash, but I know you had an awesome week.
Yeah, I had a great week in cash. Also on FanDuel, felt really good to play some Chargers and get that Sunday night kind of like hammer.
The Will Disley hammer.
Oh, dude, I played Disley and Herbert together, Chase Brown. It was nice to like, I was like, man, am I going to cash? And then you kind of see my team just roar back on FanDuel, so I had a good week. But I think on DraftKings, reading the slate is something that I just want to make sure that everybody, if you play DFS, the slate idea of kind of looking at it and say, okay, I think this is what the field is going to do. We said it was probably a 3 running back build week. We knew it was going to be popular. I didn't know it was going to be this popular where Achane was like 70+% in double ups. McCaffrey was the same. And then probably 50% of the field probably played Kamara. That's the lineup that we landed on. You probably did too, to have at least 2 or 3 of those running backs. And what that caused is for people to look at wide receivers and say, well, I'm going to pay down. So I wasn't really worried about, we loved Amon-Ra as a good play. I wasn't worried about him in cash though. Now in tournaments, if you didn't play Lions or Lions Onslaught stuff, you probably got destroyed in tournaments where you didn't have a piece of that. Like I had a team that had David Montgomery in a tournament lineup, and I got those touchdowns early. I was like, man, I am so smart. I am cooking with the Lions. And no, like, Millie Maker winner had like 5 Lions. So, you just had to go overboard. But I think the identifying the slate, looking at it's going to be 3 running back, and then paying down at wide receiver is really the key. And so Juwan Jennings is my boy, dude. I'm so proud of him. Like Cade, you said earlier, he's the Cade Otton of wide receivers.
Just shows up. He's not flashy, right? You're not gonna see him in like highlight reels for route running. But he shows up, he blocks, he catches everything thrown his way, fights for extra yards. I mean, him and Cade Otton. Can you imagine the locker room if those two are on the same team? The vibes cannot be higher. Jennings has been incredible. It's so funny. It feels like every year there's like 1 or 2 guys that just emerge and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't familiar with your game. Like I didn't even think this was possible for Juwan Jennings because he's been in the NFL, right, for a handful of years now at least. And he's pretty much been a role player the entire time. But it's been very fun to see. He's been great. He's the first read on a lot of plays. And I thought in cash, if you did not have him, I thought that was a huge mistake once we got the news that Kittle was unlikely to play. So, Juwan Jennings crushed, and DraftKings said, you know what? Let's not move his price at all.
Yeah, it's still at a point where you can play him. Purdy's price actually went down. We're dealing with injury, so we'll find out, if Purdy's sore or not. But if you want the complete review, it's free on the website. My cash lineup review article, if you just want to get some Slate ID stuff. But we had some big winners this week. Yeah, some really fun, cash winnings. We saw some people win some tournaments. I'll let you read these bets from Discord.
This is from Donde. Real talk. I joined this channel. This is in the props channel, which you also get access to with the DFS Pass. Slap $50 in my DK account. I haven't had to reload once, and I'm flying out to Vegas this week with the trip entirely paid for through the winnings. That is awesome. Nice trip out to Vegas just off of prop betting. Very good. What's this next name here? Childer Oland? 42?
Yep.
That's an interesting name. Also, took down a tourney with the Detroit Onslaughts. The first time ever taking first in a tourney. Obviously, with the winnings, DoorDashing Chili's for the family. I mean, if you want to feel like an ultimate family guy, hey, honey, you know what? I got dinner tonight, okay? Chili's is on the way.
If you think about it, depending on your season of life, your job, all that stuff, like if you budget, it's one of those things where DFS and props should be one of those things that you should budget, but you're not hopefully counting on that being a part of your monthly income for a lot of us. Some people are professionals, this is what they do. But for a lot of our listeners and a lot of our DFS Pass members, it's like, this is something that I'm enjoying as a hobby, but on the side, I get to like pay. So I bet over the next month or two, we're going to get people saying, hey, I got to pay for Christmas this year through the DFS Pass. I mean, what a chance to give back to the family. Now, we still accept everything and anything you want to give back to us. So Chili's gift cards, they're digital now.
That's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year long, Kyle.
Yep. just Don Julio for days if you need to. But moving on.
State of the main slate.
Each week, we will be referring to the DraftKings Sportsbooks line. It's where Betz and myself play. You can go to sportsbook.draftkings.com. And we're going to check in on a little bit of a wager that we made before the season. So I've talked at length, and I obviously don't need to talk anymore about my Washington under because it doesn't look good. But we had a bunch of other win totals that we took, and we haven't really checked in on them in a while. So give us one.
Okay, we took, I think on the year, we're probably going to come out around like 500 on win totals. Wasn't our best year yet, but this San Francisco under, I mean, are they going to make the playoffs at this point, Kyle?
It's over. We are screwed.
Michael Scott, I mean, he put it perfectly. This team it's over, man. Their win total currently is 8.5. Now the over is at minus 160 on DraftKings. So I don't know, man. Like, you look at this team, and by the way, the NFC West is so interesting, right? The Cardinals are in first. Every other team is 5-5, so it's right there. But this team just has so many injuries. We know obviously Ayuk is done for the year. Kittle battling a hamstring injury. We got news that Brock Purdy is battling right shoulder soreness. Their left tackle Trent Williams is like literally just barely finishing games at this point. They've got multiple injuries in the secondary. I mean, Travarius Ward's situation is heartbreaking. He's been out, for a month basically. Their all-pro safety's been out. Nick Bosa probably is not going to play again this week. Like, it's just crazy how many injuries they've had. So under 11.5 looks locked and loaded at this point, but I'm just not even sure this team makes the playoffs.
It's really tough because I can't really point my finger to one thing. I mean, they've had injuries, right? Ayuk and Kittle's out this past week, CMC out for a long time. But I feel like every single week they're in a position to win the game, right? Like this isn't like they're getting blown out or anything, but every single time I feel like they just haven't really come through. And when I look back and think about DFS, there's been individual performances, like Purdy and Kittle have been really good. Mason had a run at the beginning of the year. We used him in cash. Jennings, I just feel like they never really put it together. And so it makes me sad because I love them as an efficient offense. The biggest difference this year, we brought this up on the Dynasty podcast, I can't remember, a month in, is the yak plays with Debo have not happened this year. That's like been their what they were the best at and like best in like league history for like a 5-year run with Shanahan. And this year they've been bottom 5 in that metric. So I don't know, man. I think you can probably already cash that check if you want to.
I think so. I mean, they get Green Bay this week on the road. They are underdogs in that spot. Then they go on the road to Buffalo in back-to-back weeks. Get the Lions late in the year. The Rams, that could go either way. Like, they've got a pretty tough schedule here coming up. So yeah, I think under 11.5 looks like it's going to cash.
Yeah, we'll talk about that game in just a second. They are 2.5-point dogs, which is just still crazy to see. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We are breaking down the Week 12 slate, and this week we have a ton of teams on bye. We have 10 games on the main slate, and then our standard Thursday night. Your Eagles play on Sunday night, and then we got a really good game on Monday night too, which will be fun for showdown purposes. But talk to me about, we have one game finally that's above the 50-point mark.
Yeah, we got Lions and Colts at Indianapolis. Detroit favored in that one by 7.5. The over-under is at 50.5. Yeah, this slate's kind of interesting, right? It's only a 10-gamer on DraftKings, and a lot of the best game environments on the slate are not on the main slate. We talked about that Sunday night game, which will be on FanDuel. Philly and the Rams looks good, and then on Monday night we get an absolute electric game between the Ravens and the Chargers, the Harbaugh Bowl, which will be really fun. But on this slate, it looks again like it's probably going to be kind of low scoring based off of what we see here in the totals. But yeah, that Detroit and Indy game, 50.5, definitely sticks out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in their home leagues this week are going to feel the lack of high-end running backs. Like, there's running backs out this week. There's quarterbacks out this week. 6 teams on bye this week. And then those 3 primetime games. But hit me with the teams with the highest team implied totals as of our recording.
As is the case every week. Lions at the top, 29 points. Washington, very healthy 28 points, taking on the Cowboys. The Dolphins at 26.5, the Chiefs at 26.3, and then we have the Packers and the Texans tied at 25 points.
With 10 games, I'm looking at the way that the games are arranged. So Detroit in Indianapolis is in that early window. But then when you look at the 3 games that are in the afternoon, San Francisco, Green Bay, Arizona, Seattle, I feel like those games are going to kind of determine a lot of this and kind of be that hammer in the afternoon. Before we even get into salary standouts, I do want to say, make sure you look at the pricing this week because it is down across the board on a lot of positions of just the high-priced options. So at quarterback this week, the highest-priced quarterback on the entire slate is Jaden Daniels at $7K. That's wild to talk about when we talk about, stacking players and traditionally what somebody needs to do at their price point or what you need. So I could see this being a lower scoring slate as a whole, but there's a lot of value on the salaries. And that's really what this podcast is about, is if you can find the value, you're good to go.
That's what it's all about, baby.
All right, so which game do you feel like is going to be the most popular to stack this week?
Yeah, it's obviously that Detroit-Indy game. Anytime the Lions take the field, they're a candidate to put up 30 plus on their own. And then on the Indy side, I don't want to overreact to one game. And real quick before we talk about that, just I'm so happy for Anthony Richardson, the person, after
Yes.
what he went through the last month with that whole thing. He played great last week, and the team just looked rejuvenated. They ripped off 67 plays. That was the top 10 mark on the week. They scored 28 points, their highest in quite a while. So the offense got there. But I don't want to overreact because that was taken on a Jets team that has been trending in the wrong direction for, 6 weeks, basically. I just question the motivation level for the Jets at this point. But credit where credit is due. Indy looked great. This test will be a lot different against the Lions. Now, they did obviously lose Aiden Hutchinson back, I think it was in week 6. They just lost Alex Anzalone. He's tied for the team lead in tackles as well to a fractured forearm. So there's some key injuries on defense for Detroit that I think could help Indy stay in this game and go back and forth. So I'm at least interested in that one and in different ways to attack it, right? Because even though Detroit games are always in our head, going to be popular, at the end of the day, because there's so many options, it could be a Gibbs game, it could be a JMO game, it could be a Amon-Ra. Usually the roster percentages aren't crazy, so they're really fun for DFS because there's plenty of options and oftentimes they're not super high rostered.
Yeah, and it's, Laporta likely will be out.
We'll see. Yeah, there was a report, I think it was Sunday morning from Rap Sheet, just said that he's genuinely questionable for this week as well.
Yeah, and in Indianapolis at home is very different. Also, just, Kenny Moore is one of probably the best nickel corners in the entire league, so it does change up a little bit of how you view Amon-Ra, although he's not in the slot like he used to be as much. I wanted to bring up Arizona and Seattle because the game total is fine. It's at 47.5. We talked about Seattle last week and their pass rate. It's cool to see Geno come back and win that game. But I think what's standing out to me is that both sides are relatively cheap when you think about the upside and what we've seen from Kyler. I mean, Kyler is impossible to figure out. So I wish I could give a very firm take of this is a Kyler game and you need to stack him up and he's really, really good. But no one in this game, I went through those salaries, no one is above $7K.
But liquor, our prices have never been lower.
And that's crazy to think about a game that has a total, in the upper echelon of this week. And nobody is more than Ken Walker is the most expensive at 6.9. So when we talk about pricing, we talk about adjusting for salary and all those things when you're stacking up. This game is cheaper than it should be and cheaper than what it traditionally you'd find of the game with the second highest total on the slate. So I think it's going to be a game where you see a lot of correlation plays. Connor and Walker are both interesting for the running backs. I love DK this past week. JSN had a great game. Trey McBride is due to finally catch a touchdown. So they're just too cheap. That's my takeaway.
Is this the Wendy's value stack of the week, this game here?
Dude, there's so much value. I feel like the NFL decided, or DK decided, that they just wanted to buy only from that, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But you can actually get an expensive bill if you are just racking up as much dollar menu stuff as possible at Wendy's.
So that'll be $8. Fine. You know what? Take it.
This isn't the super bar days where you can just get as much as you want for one price.
The kids will never understand. Yeah, real quick on the Cardinals team. They've been really good recently on both sides of the ball, but especially on offense. Over the last three games played, the Cardinals are averaging 2.7 red zone touchdowns per game. That's tied for fourth. They're fourth in yards per play. They're sixth in EPA per play. So this team is doing very well. They're playing very well. They're motivated. It's all there. And since week 7, Seattle's still 19th in EPA per play defensively. So I like the Cardinals this week. I think it is a Kyler game. And I'm interested to see how the field approaches that in tournaments with Trey McBride and then obviously Marvin Harrison Jr.
Quick question. This is totally unrelated. What happened to Greg Dortch?
We're not going to talk
I feel like
about
we haven't
that.
even heard his name in months.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. But
Are
in
you-
week
are you getting
17
a
for
little
Kyle for best
scared?
ball, he's going to be what you need.
Are you a little scared about our wager about him still being in the league 2 years from now?
I'm more scared than I was in August.
I was scared in August, and now I'm not as scared. Things flip. Things change very fast. All right. Give me the game that you think is going to be a sneaky one this week. Sneaky.
So I put down New England and Miami. Miami favored at home by a touchdown. The over-under is at 46 points. We finally saw the Dolphins get back on track last week against a bad defense. It's kind of what they do. The Patriots have had their ups and downs throughout the year, but I would say largely not a great defense, right? So I like Miami. I think they're going to put up points here. On the other side, when Drake May has been under center, this offense at least has a ceiling case every week with Jacoby Brissett that was pretty much non-existent. Since May took over in week 6, New England games are 4-2 to the over. They've exceeded their team total 4 times. Drake May quietly 10th in completion rate over expected, 13th in total QBR. So the way he scrambles, the way he can create big plays, just helps game environments get there for DFS, as we saw last week against the Rams. So I like New England and Miami this week with Miami at home.
Yeah, May's sneaky, man. We'll talk about him in cash. I don't mind it if you wanted to play him this week just because you're getting a rushing floor. And I feel like May's going to be one of those players next year that enters the conversation if they, get a free agent wide receiver, T. Higgins, or maybe they get somebody in the draft. Sneaky game. Just hear me out, okay? The Broncos and your Raiders, okay? I know that the Raiders are kind of like a stain. We don't want to talk about them, but if you look at their pass rate over expectation over the last month, and they've decided to get rid of Luke Getsy, it's a new offense. They decided, hey, Desmond Ridder, not really our guy. We're just going to keep standing on the sideline. But they're 4th in pass rate over the last month. Their running backs are just decimated. We know they already couldn't run the ball, but now we're very confirmed, okay, it's going to be like Amir Abdullah out of the backfield. And then Bowers just went ham last week. He also went ham against the Broncos earlier. But the Broncos have just been one of the most efficient offenses in the NFL. I was so sad to watch the Broncos and Falcons game. I actually got my entire home league together. I don't know if you knew this, Betz. We had a little get together. We're like, hey, this year before Thanksgiving, let's all watch the Falcons game together. Somebody in our league is a Broncos fan. And so we were just like, this will be great. The Falcons are trending well. This will be easy. It's like a homecoming win. Throttled, just completely destroyed. And all of us and our Falcons fans are just so sad. And then our Broncos fans like, heck yeah, Bo Nix is the best thing ever. So
and that game, the spread was what, 2.5 points or something, and they just got boat raced.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. In our pick'em pool, I took the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean the Falcons have some key injuries right on defense right now,
and they decide to lay hot farts all the time. But the Broncos been top 10 in red zone plays since week 5. They've been efficient. Last time these two teams played, Knicks had 3 total touchdowns, and the game hit the over. It had 52 combined points. So I think this is a sneaky game. If you wanted to stack up the Broncos side and bring it back with Bowers or Jacoby, I think there's some value there if you want to go there. Which game do you want to be underweight on this week?
So I'm going to throw out Minnesota and Chicago. The spread right now, Minnesota -3.5. The over-under is just 39.5 points. It's one of those things that I could see the over hitting here. But when you look at Chicago, it was nice to see them play, with some level of execution last week. Before it was just this is going nowhere and everybody knows it. At least they were able to get it going last week a little bit. Obviously a brutal loss at the end there on the field goal. But in their first game without Shane Waldron, the offense played a lot more slowly and more run heavy. They dropped in their pace. Their pass rate dropped from 57% to 50% last week. Now they get a Minnesota defense that's number 1 in EPA against the run. So my fear is that the Bears try to do what they did last week because it worked. It fails. Caleb Williams is forced to drop back against the blitz-heavy defense from Brian Flores, and it kind of goes south again real quick. So that's my issue with this game. On the road in Chicago, like where just at this time of year, games historically don't shoot out. Kind of feels like one that I'll shy away from.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm looking right now. It's the lowest total on the slate. You did see some things with Caleb last week that worked. I think he had 70 rushing yards. So it's outside the pocket stuff that we liked. But I do agree. I think that's a game that I'm probably going to mostly stay away from. Pour one out for the Chiefs, who are no longer undefeated. Apparently, Chiefs' money line was the bet to take, which at this point, we have a little bit of data in front of us that when one of the hosts on this show, who will go unnamed, when he has a strong feeling about a road team to take money line, go the opposite way. Do George Costanza and just do the opposite of whatever I say. This is why I do not bet sides and totals at all.
Who is the play that you might feel confident about this week, Kyle? We're all wondering.
Talk to me on Friday's podcast. But the game I want to be underweight on is Kansas City at Carolina. Kansas City's 11-point road favorite, but they haven't covered the spread in 4 straight games, and they've hit their team implied total of over 26 just 4 times this year. I think this game's going to be super gross. I think you're going to see Carolina lean on the run, even if it's ineffective. You're going to see a ton of Chuba, and Carolina's 31st in plays per game and time of possession. It's just a gross game. I don't really think you need to go there at all. And Kansas City's still relatively expensive for this slate. Like you think about some of the players. Kelsey might be interesting if you want to play him as a one-off, but I think it's one of those games you don't have to go to. And then the running backs, if Pacheco's back, we have no idea how the backfield is going to be split up. So it's a game that I don't really want to be part of. Which team are you most confident hits the over of their team implied total?
I'm back in the Texans. Obviously they just played on Monday night, but you get Stroud, you get Nico, you get Tank. Joe Mixon looks incredible. The offense comes back home. I think they can put up 24 plus points here. Obviously, the splits with Stroud in his career at home versus on the road are drastic. We've talked about that at length, this year and last year as well. They get Tennessee. We already know L'Jarius Sneed is out. Tennessee is allowing 26.3 points per game. That's 26th. The middle of the pack in pressure rate, and 8 of 10 opponents have gone over their team total against the Titans. So I think it's a good spot for the Texans here coming home. And I do think Nico will be unleashed a little bit more this week. They kind of eased him in on a snap count last night. I think he'll be full go this week.
I'm going to be backing the Tampa Bay Bucks. They are 5-point road favorites, which is kind of an intriguing line when you consider, they've been pretty bad recently. They've been on a losing streak, but they're coming off the bye. They've hit their team implied total of 23 points in 6 of the last 7 games. And the big question mark here, is Mike Evans back? Because if he's back, I feel even stronger about this. In 6 career games against the Giants, he's averaged 6 for 109 and 1.
If we got that would be beautiful.
Do it. Well, what's the update? I mean, this is me just asking.
Oh, if he plays? They basically said he's targeting this game. That was the report before the bye week. They held a Monday walkthrough. Everybody out there in shorts, so hard to say what people were doing. But he was there. Before the bye, he was doing work on the side field with the trainer. So it sounds like he's getting close. Hard to say how effective he would be in his first game, but it'd be GPP only for me if he's in.
I was just taking the headline as man decides that he wants to show up back up to work in like a couple of weeks. He'll show up in shorts. It's just so funny. I mean, obviously he's dealing with an injury and Mike Evans is an all-timer, but it's always funny when I think of NFL like as a job. And part of the job is, I think I might come back to work in a couple of weeks. I'm shooting for this, but who knows? I would kind of want to give Andy, Mike, and Jason that.
Yeah, because there's really no other career where you can just be like, I think it'll be a couple of weeks. Not sure, maybe. But if I don't feel right, then it'll be the week after. Every time you got to put in your, I'll be out for 2 weeks. I'll be out for whatever. Yeah, we got to bring that up to HR.
Yeah, I'll be in the hot tub for the next couple of weeks trying to, get better, try to relax in my shorts, just, walking around, not doing much. No, Mike Evans is an all-timer. But Tampa Bay, I think, is an intriguing team. Which team are you most confident hits the under of their team implied total?
So in the same game, I took over on Houston. I'm going to take under on Tennessee. They have scored 20-plus points just twice all year. One of those games was against the Dolphins with Mason Rudolph, where he played in relief for Will Levis. Houston defensively, 8th in EP per play, number 2 in success rate, number 2 in pressure rate on the year. You saw even last night in that game against Cooper Rush and the Cowboys, they could still generate a ton of pressure even without Will Anderson. I think there's a chance Will Anderson could be back this week. You get Tennessee, who's dead last in red zone plays per game on the road. And we've talked about this, I think, in like 3 weeks in a row. Will Levis against pressure, obviously not very good. He faced a 48.7% pressure rate last week against the Vikings. So no thank you on the Titans.
I think, and call me crazy, that it's not going so well for Dallas.
It's over. We are screwed.
Did you see the headline? What did Jerry said today, and I quote, we didn't anticipate having a record of 3-7. Sounds just like everybody in fantasy football. Like, I didn't really see this going this way, but Dallas has lost 5 straight. We know they can't run the ball. And in Cooper Rush starts, they have 6 points and 10 points. It's not gone so well.
If these trends continue.
They're on the up and up.
13 this week, baby.
Well, their team implied total is 17.5. I would take the under. Backwards hat Dan knows this team quite well. And Washington is 5th in points allowed at home, 16 points, and 4 of the 5 opponents went under this mark at home. Washington's a heavy favorite. It's just really hard to buy in anyone now. They've lost Jake Ferguson. However, for us in DFS, that does open up the Schoon man, Luke Schoonmaker, if you want to play him as a punt play. But I am not backing Dallas in any way. No, thank you. Moving on. If I could find the button, there it is.
Salary standouts.
You know, I have a little board, a little stream deck in front of me. And now that I've added all these really fun office quotes, I have to like scroll through. But, you know, if there's a drop that you want on the show, just message me, people. Like, I'm always looking to add some fresh stuff on the drops.
Please do.
Yeah, I mean, I got the Buttlicker quote just because of you, Betz. Thank you for following through. This is my job. These are the salaries on Tuesday that we think kind of stand out to us. We will probably have some updates. We'll talk to you about it on Friday. You can get them in the DFS pass, but talk to me about quarterback this week.
Yeah, you already mentioned it. There's really not any expensive plays, which is interesting because when you think about the dynamic at quarterback, the reason partially that we've been spending down in cash is because of spending up at running back and wanted to try to like not worry about getting buried by Josh Allen or whoever. There's no Lamar on the slate, right? There's no like high price guys. It's Jaden Daniels by himself at 7K. So I think Daniels is in play. I mean, we talked about the team total there with the Commanders. It's the second highest on the slate, taking on the Cowboys, who have major issues defensively. So it feels like a good week to quote unquote spend up, relatively speaking, because you are getting some really high ceiling plays here at a cheap price. So Daniels at 7K looks interesting. Also throw out Bo Nix. You talked about that game environment. Nix has just been incredible for fantasy, running a ton. He's been great. If you really want to spend down this week, I don't think you have to, but we've gotten questions already about Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets at 4K. He's the Stone Min. And it's funny because we always get to like this part of the year and these cheap Stone Min quarterback plays keep opening up because, you know, starters get benched, players get hurt. But what's your just first gut reaction here on Tommy Cutlets at 4,000?
I hate him.
Okay. Good conversation.
So I need to, it needs to be starting quarterback. That's the name I have to transform it into. And then go, okay, at 4K, what does he have to do? And then how popular the other play is going to be. So my takeaway is because the slate overall has a lot of value, I don't need to dip in and just like go for another, you know, value nugget. Like that's all he is, right? It's just like you're getting some cheap nuggets on the value menu, but you already have a bunch of that. So I think at the end of the day, I'm probably going to pay 5.5 for Drake May in the 6K range for Nix or Purdy, like, or Daniels at 7K is stupid cheap considering their team implied total. So if there were more expensive options, or I knew we were playing really expensive guys at other spots, I'd do it. But I think there's good value on the slate. You don't have to.
I think that's fair.
But talk to me later in the week. I might be feeling alive. it was fun to play Jameis, who was stupid cheap. But I know that I've played guys like AOC, and it has stressed me out, man, when I play those. Like Gardner, I played Gardner earlier this year, and I was so stressed the whole time to get to 10 points.
Your heart rate and blood pressure just through the roof from 1 to 4 p.m.
Oh, man. I have my little tracker, my Whoop tracker, not a sponsor, but
Could be
big
a sponsor.
fan. But you like seeing which times your stress level spikes throughout the day. There's like a point at 7:08 in the morning the last couple days where I'm trying to get my kids out the door to get on the bus where it's just spikes. And then I saw one the other day, and it was literally while I was watching the Falcons game, and you could see it just like, Kirk's getting pressured, and I'm stressed out for him. And
that's so good.
Bad. I know. On FanDuel, because the Eagles game is part of it, the Sunday night game, Hurts is in play against the Rams at 9.3. Bo Nix is 8K. And then I really like Drake May. Like, can we talk about Drake May on DraftKings at 5.5, FanDuel at 6.9? It's intriguing, and you kind of talked about that game being a sneaky one this week.
Yeah, Drake May's been good. I mean, he throws deep, he runs, he scrambles. It's kind of what you want for fantasy. So, yeah, I mean, 5.5 is a nice tag for Drake May. I wish the weapons were better. You know, like we played Kayshon Boutte last week. Solid 7 points. He did his job in cash. But that's the only thing that kind of like holds me back of like, is there really like a true high-end ceiling here? I mean, at 5.5, you don't really need that, but that's just my only hesitation is just the weapons are so bad.
The crazy thing is I was asking the exact same question for Jaden Daniels because we haven't seen a ceiling game recently. And if they boat race Dallas, if you get a couple of touchdowns on the ground to the running backs, is that like another opportunity where Daniels just kind of cruises to a victory and you don't get a ceiling outcome? Like, look at Daniels' game logs and go through it and go like, man, have I seen this in like a month and a half? And I don't know. I know that May's going to have to be competitive the whole time. So that's more speculation. So we'll see about that. Moving on to running back. We were a little disappointed with CMC last week. We only got, 15 points. Where's our 30? Didn't work out. I'm still interested in CMC at 8.5. If Purdy doesn't play, then, you can kind of change the scenario. But I think CMC is still in play. The workload's still good. And I think you're going to see eruption. So CMC at 8.5 is still too cheap.
Yeah, he's still just seeing so much usage. I mean, if you tell me before the slate locks, McCaffrey's going to get you 18 to 20 carries and also add in somewhere between 4 and 7 targets in most outcomes, I mean, it's a great play. Hasn't worked out yet, doesn't mean it won't. So yes, I'm with you on that. I like the cheaper options here, like in the mid-range. James Conner looks super strong. He is the workhorse for this team. They've been very good taking on the Seahawks. We talked about that game a little bit. We'll also throw out, if Pacheco does not play this week, we're still waiting on news there. They said the report was that he is healthy enough to play this week, but it'll be a team decision. What I'm reading into that is they're playing the Panthers. They're favored by a bajillion points. They probably don't need Isaiah Pacheco this week, so why rush him back? So if he does not play, Kareem Hunt at 5.7K, they buried his price. Taking on the Panthers looks very strong.
Yes, I like that range a lot if Hunt's the lone guy. And then the Washington running backs, I don't know what they were thinking, just kind of leaving them buried, but they're both 5.6. Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler. As a heavy favorite, if you don't want to play Jaden Daniels, if you're worried about game script, I feel like Brian Robinson is just a solid play at home against maybe the worst rush defense in the league at 5.6. Like that screams cash, man.
Yeah. The only fear on Robinson just every week is, I mean, we think they're going to control the game and they should be in a positive game script, but weird stuff happens in the NFL and it's kind of like Derrick Henry, right? Where if it goes sideways, he's not on the field. It'll be Austin Eckler. So that's my only little hesitation, but I'm pretty sure they're going to win this game and, he will be the dude at the goal line. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Dallas obviously can't stop anybody on the ground.
I mean, that price is wildly low.
Yeah.
For a starting running back on a team with a 28-point team implied total. So that's
sure.
kind of like where I lean. If you don't want to go Daniels, I like Brian Robinson Jr. You mentioned Connor. He's a really good play on FanDuel as well at 7.7. But these running backs that are in the 7K range, we've kind of been jamming them in, like multiple guys Devon Achane is still a really good play. It seems like they don't care about Raheem Mostert anymore. That's a weird situation, but Achane at 7.5 is getting the usage we care about. He's a good play at home. Gibbs, if you just want to follow the team implied total, I think Gibbs is a really solid play at 7.3. And then one more play I wanted to throw out there. Tyrone Tracy is only 6K, and we know that he's getting a ton of work. They're at home. I mentioned that game against Tampa Bay. Any interest there?
Yeah, Tracy's been great. And, before the bye week, they kind of talked about it in pressers. Brian Daboll did, and he basically is like, yeah, Tyrone's the dude. So Singletary's gotten phased out massively over the last month. Obviously, with the quarterback issues and left tackle Andrew Thomas out for the year, there's always a situation where it obviously goes very poorly for the Giants, but the workload is there and the price is right. And I mean, Tracy's looked good. I don't know what your thoughts are there, but I thought he's looked explosive and looked effective. So yeah, Tracy is really interesting against the Bucs.
I mean, I have to take an L on a evaluation standpoint because the best part about my research process is I can look historically and I feel like I have a good grid of that. The worst part is I weigh the history maybe too heavily on players that are really, really old and that are entering the NFL. I mean, it's like there's nobody who's 24 years old entering the NFL that's been good at running back other than like James Starks. And he's been awesome. And he's their, he's their guy. They don't even care about Singletary anymore.
Yeah. Before the bye, he had 18 carries in that game over in Munich. So yeah, Tracy's the dude.
Yeah, I haven't figured out if I want this to be a 3 running back build the week, but I do find, 5 or 6 strong plays early in the week at running back that it, if I had to guess right now, it does lean that direction again. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. Betz had to take a dump, but we are here. Not true.
Kyle.
Not true. That was
TMI.
Hey, it's part of the process, just every single person, part of their process. We do tell people to don't do DFS on the toilet though.
I mean, why not?
The research part, you're not going to, you can tinker, don't get me wrong, tinker with lineups, but don't do your research and the optimizer is not built optimally for the toilet.
No, you got to do your research for DFS, for props on a desktop, like an adult, focused, laser focused, not on the toilet.
Let's talk wide receivers. And I'm already seeing the same setup we had last week where the expensive options are going to be good you're going to start them in your home league, but for DFS, are we going to pay up that much? So like, for instance, are you paying 8.1 for Justin Jefferson on the road in Chicago? It's like, I don't know if I want to spend there. Amon-Ra, it's a game total we like. It's 8.3. It's a slot matchup we don't love with Kenny Moore, but that's just another place that I just don't think the field is going to go there. Maybe they want to chase last week's points, but Nico, 7.6. I just don't see the field paying up for those guys at all. And that kind of leads me to going the next tier or so down and seeing like, okay, it's probably going to be another 5 or 6K range week.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the sweet spot for cash this year. And it's kind of the same names every week at this point, right? Like Cortland Sutton, still just seeing a ton of targets from Bo Nix. Obviously, it's a very good matchup. I'll let you talk about Juwan Jennings, who looks like Randy Moss in his prime out there. They didn't really move his price at all. And then Jacoby Myers, again, is kind of in the conversation. He's a little bit cheaper this week at 5.1. So that 5K range looks pretty good again for cash.
Yeah, if you're looking at projections and you're looking at target share and you see somebody like Juwan Jennings, you go, oh, 5.6. Okay, he's a little bit more expensive. This dude's going to see 25% of the targets. And that should be a player that's, I don't know, at least $7,000. And that's kind of not what we're seeing. Same thing with Jacoby Myers. This week, kind of interested in Jacoby Myers. Last week I was not, but at 5.1, you're going to say the same thing. It's like, okay, this guy projects well. You could look that direction. So yeah, Juwan, Sutton, Jacoby, those were the guys last week. If you want to punt with the Patriots wide receiver, Pop Douglas is 4.5, but you seem to be going a different direction, going back to the well with Booty.
Oh man, this guy. I was like 90% convinced, like when the slate locked, I was like, he's probably giving us a 0 this week, isn't he? And this dude just grinded. He did his job, Kyle. Last 2 weeks, 8.7 and 7.3 points. I mean, for a wide receiver at this price in cash, you will take that. It's interesting. The wide receiver situation for the Patriots, it's sort of a committee, but like he's the guy. Last week in that game, he ran 45 routes on 46 dropbacks for Drake May. The next closest wide receiver was Pop Douglas at 29. So he's out there for every play, running every route. He's not a very good target earner, so I don't think there's a huge ceiling here, obviously. But at 3,500 on DraftKings, I think he is at least in the pool, just like he was last week.
If you want to go on FanDuel, I still don't understand what they're doing with Juwan Jennings. Like, he's still underpriced at 6.7. So I think Juwan Jennings, if Purdy plays, I think he's a lock in cash on FanDuel. I think he'll be super popular on DK as well, but 6.7 is a crazy tag. And then I wanted to get your thoughts. This is a fan perspective, but I'm looking at that Sunday night game. It's included in the FanDuel pool, and Puka is still priced under Kupp by a good amount, where Kupp paying up for him is a lot. Puka is 8.6. It's against the Philly pass defense that's been really, really good recently. So my question is, like, is their pass defense something that you should stay away from? Or like, hey, based on this price, I think Puka's a solid play.
I mean, I'll never say anything bad about Puka. He's just, his role and like the way they use him and put him in motion and all those sort of things, like he's pretty much matchup proof. So I still think he's in play. It's one of the best totals on the slate. So I'm not worried about the pass D for the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles have been awesome recently, but we kind of talked about this like in passing before the game last week on Thursday night. I was like, I'm excited about my team. Like, it's fun when they win, but they haven't really played anyone. Like the last, quarterbacks they faced since the bye week, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow. They played well against Joe Burrow, but then it was the Jaguars. It was the Cowboys. Jane Daniels didn't look himself on that Thursday night game. So like, the numbers say it's a bad matchup, but Puka is matchup proof. Sean McVay knows how to get his guys the ball, so I'm not worried about it.
I was shocked last week playing FanDuel that like Puka was like in double ups, just like not played very much. And he was like one of our top plays. So
I think it was, again, a pricing thing with people just jamming in, CMC and Kamara and those guys.
Guess so. I just was like, this is awesome. I'm just riding this wave. Nobody else has him in double ups. Tight end. There's some punt options. I'll explain the expensive options in a second, but I think I'm going to lean probably more towards spending down because we like so many running backs.
Yeah, I like Hunter Henry. He was 3,900 last week. They bumped him up $100 taking on the Dolphins. He is averaging 7 targets per game since Drake May has been the starter. That's a 21% target share. I like him more than Kayshon Boutte. I would not play them both together in cash, personally. If you wanted to go even further, the Davis Allen play of this week is Luke Schoonmaker, the Schoon Man, who is the Stone Man because of the pricing from Monday night, taking on Washington. Jake Ferguson left that game with a concussion. He's unlikely to play this week based off the fact that was a Monday night game. He only has 6 days to clear protocol. So if Ferguson is out, Schoon Man is very interesting at the Stone Min.
Yes, and I actually think I like this more than the Davis Allen last week. And we talked about in the range of outcomes for Davis Allen was an air ball. And he was like my fade. I don't see that for the Schoon Man, but, kind of different. I'll see what roster percentages dictate. We knew Davis Allen would be popular play. It was him and Dawson Knox this past week. I'll see what and let roster percentage dictate. But I think Hunter Henry is probably my favorite of that group. Brock Bowers is 6.3. If you want to just add that in the wide receiver column, he is unreal, dude. He had a 41% target share this past week, a 43% air yard share, and according to our own Marvin Eloquin, that's the 5th highest usage value by a tight end since 2020. All the other top games were like Darren Waller, so it's like all Raiders on the list. But Bowers' 16 targets last week was unbelievable. I think they're going to count on him again. He had a big game against the Broncos earlier this year. So Bowers is going to look good. Kelsey, I didn't play him this past week. Apologies if you did, because he was my number one tight end when you adjust for salary, and he was bad. But 5.8, I think Kelsey's going to be interesting for tournaments. It's just one of those things that I feel like we're at the point now where it's like, I'm not worried about other people playing Kelsey that much, where it used to be the case. Remember years ago, it's like, man, I'm terrified. If I don't have Kelsey, I'm going to get buried.
Yeah, you'd be just terrified to show up in cash without him because you knew there was like a 10-catch game that was
yes,
not just like in the range of outcomes, but like kind of likely. Obviously, the way the Chiefs are playing right now is very different. Like anybody on the Chiefs can get there this week. It's the Panthers. But like you talked about, massive spread. Do they kind of just coast to a victory here and not have to do too much? I think that's somewhat likely. So yeah, Kelsey for me, I think is tournament only. But at 5,800, it's definitely intriguing for sure.
At defense this week, I have the Dolphins. If you want to go right back there, I played them in cash last week. If you want to play them again, they only went up $100. They're playing at home against the Patriots. There's a bunch of guys in the middle range that I think are fine. You have Tampa Bay listed here against your boy Danny DeVito. So if you want to do that, go for it. I need to go and do some searching on DeVito stats because I know it wasn't good last year, but I need to remind myself how bad it was.
I got it for you. He had a 37.9% pressure to sack ratio. And for context, that is historically bad. You know, we've been talking about on the show, like Caleb's taken a lot of sacks, Deshaun Watson's taken a lot of sacks. Their ratio has been around 28, 29%. 37% is insane. When he played at least 2/3 of the snaps in games last year, the opposing defense averaged 5 sacks per game. So the Bucs look incredible. They come out of their bye. I mean, if they use a lot of blitzes, like it could go south really quickly for Tommy DeVito in this game. So it was kind of fun last year for fantasy and like the story and the headlines and all those things, but like on the field product for Tommy DeVito was quite poor. So I think the Bucs look incredibly strong.
Yeah, 3.3 if you want to play them. I don't even mind the Giants on the other side. They're at home if you want to punt it off a bridge at 2.4. The Packers, the Packers at home against the 49ers are a scary play because we know how good the 49ers can be, but this team's really injured, banged up, and so I don't mind the Packers. I don't have a read though on like how popular they're going to be.
Yeah, I think right now I just wanted to put on people's radar as like we at least are identifying there's some fragility with the Niners currently based off their injury situation. You know, Purdy less than 100%. We'll see on Kittle. All those things, you know, left tackle Trent Williams, we already talked about 3 times on the show. So I think they're probably not going to get played because it's like, oh, you see the Niners on the schedule and you're like, oh, I can't play a defense against them. I think they're a sneaky tournament play if they're not going to be played at all.
If you want to play with us, go to ballersdfs.com. It will direct you to our DraftKings League, Fantasy Footballers DFS, Borg, and Betz. You can join the league, enter a contest. You can invite your friends. And this Thursday, we will have a game between the Steelers and the Browns, which has the lowest total of the week. That's where it gets down and dirty with, like, you're going to write the showdown article. That'll be out later this week. But, like, I can already see you trying to figure out, okay, Jameis wants to throw the ball a ton. And yet this total is so low that we're just asking ourselves to play, I don't know, Steelers defense and Boswell.
I love these slates for showdown. I mean, this is for us, Kyle. This is for the sickos, the grinders. You know, everybody loves to show up for, you know, Chargers, Bengals when it's a fun, high-scoring game. But these low-scoring slates, I think they're interesting. So, yes, check out the write-up. It'll be in the DFS Pass, usually out like Thursday morning, 10 o'clock or so, East Coast.
And this is just a free tip for you if you want to just start writing this now. I really liked Calvin Austin this past week. It didn't work out. But we know the main principle in DFS, if it didn't work last week, it'll probably end up working this week.
Flop lag, as they say.
Yeah. So just make sure you just write that in. Give me some credit. That'll be really good. But yeah, DFSpass.com. We'd love for you guys to be a part of it. Betz, tell everyone goodbye.
Yeah, I hope everybody has an awesome week. We will be back later in the week for more props, another show on Friday, and like Kyle said, that beautiful, beautiful write-up for Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers with a 36-point total will be in the DFS Pass later this week. We'll see you guys on Friday. Have an awesome week.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.